Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. Beautiful, happy Tuesday to every single one of you that's watching live here. Look, it is, wow, June 17th, 2025. It is beautiful. Thank you so very much for all of you tuning in. So good to have all of you here in the chat. I can see y'all with just smiling faces already and set to go. If you guys have not already, while you're smiling, go ahead and hit the like button. That changes that little red box from you guys hit the like button, and then also subscribe. Change that little red box from red to gray. If you guys there, you can also share as well. So thank you very much for all of that. Also, if you guys have not, have you considered subscribe to my Substack? Just go to jaybefaunt.substack.com so you guys can get email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or even write any articles. So you guys have that there. And if you guys would like to, you guys can find me on QBounty for any type of video reactions to your questions or reactions to any type of media that you may send me to react to. You guys just go to qbounty.com/Jaybefaunt. So you guys have that there as well. So thank you so much. Look, I see all of you guys in the chat. It is so good to see all of you beautiful smiling faces. A blanket hello to every single one of you. But as always, whenever I have guests, I want to be very respectful of their time because they are very busy people. And I want to make sure that we get to the conversation at hand. So why are we here? Why are you here? Well, you guys saw the thumbnail. So let's get into it. We're going to be talking about these things right now. So later in the show today, we're going to be talking about Ron DeSantis. He lost a battle here in Florida, and I think that is an important discussion that we need to get into. This is involving teachers. What battle did he lose, and how bad is it? We'll be getting into that. And also, we're going to be talking about the big story that happened yesterday, really adding on to the ongoing story that's happening over the weekend. But Dave Smith is calling out for Trump's impeachment. Wow, say it ain't so. So we're going to be getting into that. But first, we're going to be getting into our, comrades here coming back to talk about demands pledge. We have Eric and Corey coming in to talk about a pledge when it comes to the 11 demands. They're going to explain all this, what it means, and how it can actually benefit us as far as getting liberation for ourselves. So Eric and Corey from the Savvy Sabs podcast, good to see you guys joining me again.
Hey. All right. Hey, JB, I just want to say you are looking good.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Happy to see it. Definitely.
Yeah, I was like
good, feeling good, living your best life, right?
Well, I mean, it's like Mama said, when you got company over, you gotta make sure you're presentable for company. So I'm just sorry I don't have the Sanka coffee and the Entenmann's cakes to put out in front of y'all, but we're digital.
Sandwiches, tea time, all that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got my tea, so
yeah.
I was talking about that earlier before we went live. I was just like, man, I actually put the lemon zest in my tea this time too, so it has a really great lemon flavor. I'm thinking about making this again, but then cooling it down and making it iced tea. It's gonna be delicious. Oh, man.
Nice, that time of year.
Yes, definitely. Plus, I'm in Florida in the South. Iced tea, or as they know, sweet tea, is it's the good stuff. So, of course, everybody knows you guys. I said the 11 demands, and just for anybody who wants to know what the 11 demands are, I actually have it in a playlist on the channel. So if you guys want to, it's actually a playlist series on here as well. But as far as the 11 demands, we actually have went over the 11 demands before, which is pretty comprehensive as far as the demands for a real democracy. I actually showed this last night with our other guest Cash when we were talking about reparations. But just as a quick once over for people who have not heard of the 11 demands for real democracy is fix big money in politics and government, healthcare for all, minimum standard of living for everyone, end the wars, respond to the climate emergency, racial and criminal justice reform, which includes reparations, reject censorship, immigration reform, elect the system we can trust, which talks about star voting and ranked choice voting, and then revamp taxation and funding and democratize democratize the enterprise, basically workers owning the means of production. So that's just the 11 demands. But you actually wanted to go even further than that and proposing something called a pledge. If you guys can expand on that a little bit more so that we can, glean from, what you're throwing at us.
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing I'd say about the 11 is that when the demands, kind of the 2 through 11, right after the first one, those are kind of the concrete things that we need, and it's this idea that you have to have clear demands, right? If you're gonna have a protest, if you're gonna have a strike, you have to have clear demands. And what I found, and I think people will find generally, what happens is that when you start demanding these things, you go through 2 through 11 and whatnot, you always come back to the same issue. Our government is implacably corrupt and won't give us the things we need. They're bought off. And so what happens is every time you go to one of these, you always end up back at demand number 1, which is to decorrupt the government. You have to, they work for the billionaires, the mega corporations, and, until you fix that big money, it's not going to get better. However, if you do fix that big money, it does get better. So then we get to the point where, okay, Eric, or 11 demands people, you've got this great set of demands, but demands without power behind them, right? What good are they? So then we get to the next step, and this is getting back to what you were leading with. And the most recent Substack post, right? It's called "The Core Problem, the Challenge, and the Solution." The biggest thing I would posit in that is the middle one, the challenge. What is the biggest challenge for having this stuff go somewhere, having these demands mean something? And I think where you end up with, when you do, and this talks about doing a root cause analysis and get to the root cause and how do we do this, the biggest challenge is the numbers, the people. We have to figure out a way to inspire literally millions of people to start thinking this way and having a demand-based movement to have this happen, to have this turn into a real thing. If we can do that, some incredible things are possible, I think. If we can't do that, then we're really just going to stay the microscopic little left people that we are. So that's kind of what I've come to recently. The big challenge is, how do we inspire those millions of people? And so then 11 Demands Pledge and 11 Demands Collective is about that. It's about, can we form this core group of people who believe in the demands, the idea, that are ready to frame things as MCDS, money, corruption, demand solutions, and spread the word and get that out there and be the spark that turns into something bigger. And so I would encourage everyone to check out 11 Demands in this, and the pledge. If it makes sense to you, then what you do is you put your name in there and you end up as a member of the 11 Demands Collective. It's not a paid thing. It's not even a club or an org. It's more of a thought collective, at least at this point. We'll see where we go. But the idea is to be in that frame of mind and to be spreading that word and try to make this into something real. So that's what being a member of the 11 Demands Collective is about. And the pledge is kind of the way in. And it's all on the site, 11demands.org. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and the other thing is really, the framework to build around, and it can be applied in different ways. Like Sabrina, UJB, and RBN at large, definitely focuses on the importance of local organizing and doing things like ballot initiatives. And so, the framework of the 11 Demands Collective, really, it's, as Eric kind of alluded to, it's a living work in progress, and we are looking for people to collaborate and to be part of that. I just generally overall believe that we're all equal in this, and we're all stuck in this system, and we have to work with each other to get out of it, or else we won't.
And you do have to check a box that says you're not a robot.
So I just want to go over this pledge really quick, just so that people are familiarized themselves with it, so that they can, when you do go into it, you guys know exactly what it says. So it's the 11 Demands Pledge. It says, as a member of the 11 Demands Collective, I pledge to educate people on the deep corruption in the system and how it crosses partisan and ideological lines. Identify the core problem that must be addressed: big money in politics and government. Call out our so-called representatives as servants of the top 0.1% and demand revolutionary reforms. Describe the solutions as outlined in demand number 1. Spread the word about 11 Demands, MCDS, Money Corruption Demands Solutions. It says our goal is to reach a critical mass of people thinking this way and demanding an end to the corruption. A broad movement that is too big to ignore. Take the pledge to join the 11 Demands Collective. Enter your name below, and it will be added to the members page. And so you can put your name. You can also put your URL for your website as well, and then you just send. And so it's pretty simple, but it also talks about the demands that we were basically highlighting. And you were a lot of times people you bring these demands up to people. People across the political spectrum would be on board for a lot of these things. I would probably say, at least a good 60 to 70% of the demands people would be on board with, especially getting money out of politics, especially. So, I mean, this is why I think it would be, advantageous for people, if they were to, especially those of us in independent media, because the thing is like, we're already doing this. So is it really any skin off our back? No, because we're already doing it, right? So I think it's great because you're trying to reach a critical mass of people, in that regard.
And the idea is to kind of organize behind the clear set of demands. I feel like this, one of the things I think happens a lot is that the left and even the real left independent media that we like at times can be really good at identifying the problem and digging down to, and calling people out. And yes, when we're talking about the powerful, the uniparty, that only serves the MIC military industrial complex and the billionaires, yes, they need to be called out relentlessly. But then we have to go to that next step, the D in MCDS, the demands, because if you're not going to that next step, then first, why the powerful are going to give you anything? Because you're not asking for anything. Power concedes nothing without it. And also, I think there's a real danger of kind of audience fatigue. The left independent media is good at calling things out and getting people on board. But then it's kind of like you get to this place where, okay, I agree with what you're saying, but where are we going? What do we do about all this? And, and then we have things like the fake movements that are really like a lot of the anti-Trump stuff these days is just orange man bad and doesn't talk about the deep corruption in both parties.
Yeah.
So, that's where the demands get you. It gets you past that potentially. Yeah. So that's the concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to just specify for the 11 Demands Collective, if you choose to sign up for the website, which we would love for you to do, you do not have to use your government name. Use whatever moniker you want.
Okay, great. One of the things that I wanted to also add to your point was I keep thinking about, for instance, the Occupy Wall Street, protest. And on top of that, it was the Occupy Wall Street protest where there wasn't really a huge set of demands that were made. You think about back to the BLM protest back in 2020, there was no real concrete set list of demands that were, agreed upon by the masses in order to be able to have real police reform. And now, even just recently, as the ICE protest or the No Kings protest that they just had over the weekend, what real set of demands were there outside of saying, oh, Trump is bad? You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the biggest issues that I have with a lot of these things, because the problem I see, especially these days, is that mobilization is easy. And I'm gonna be honest with you, and this is going to sound somewhat pessimistic, but stay with me. Getting out into the streets with signs and marching, that's good, but that's the easy part. What's difficult is doing the unsexy work of actually organizing on the ground, behind the scenes, doing things that people won't really recognize you much for. And so it's funny because over the weekend, I was helping out a mutual aid group here in Orlando, and we were helping out with their farm, which they use to feed groups and do mutual aid. And one of the things that we actually did was we actually went over some excerpts from Audre Lorde's book, Learning from the 60s. And just to, go over just a little bit. So Audre Lorde said, as Black people, if there's one thing we can learn from the 60s, is how infinitely complex any move for liberation must be. For we must move against not only those forces which dehumanize us from the outside, but also against the oppressive values which we have been forced to take into ourselves. Through examining the combination of our triumphs and errors, we can examine the dangers of an incomplete vision. Not to condemn that vision, but to alter it, construct templates for possible futures, and focus our rage for change upon our enemies rather than upon each other. In the 1960s, the awakened anger of the Black community was often expressed, not vertically against the corruption of power and true sources of control over our lives, but horizontally toward those closest to us who mirrored our own impotence. So really, and she goes over that, not only organizing, but also organizing with people who we may not have complete agreement with. I think, having a set list of demands where everybody can agree on with those demands, and we may have, different, like for instance, Corey could like pineapple on his pizza, and I may think that's the most horrible thing in the world, and that's where we differ. Like in another universe, I'd probably slam the door in Corey's face for liking pineapple on pizza, but because he agrees on the list of demands, right? Then we can come together and, work on these things. And so
unifying the big stuff.
But, that's the point. And I think having a clear list of demands also assists with that.
Yeah, it's this idea of demands come first, right? But if you look at when people have gotten in the streets and we've seen these movements come up, it tends to happen because there is some version of a clear demand. When we saw the big when we saw the big BLM protests get into the streets, I would submit what the reason that happened, the spark for that was that people really people were appalled when they looked at their screens and saw a police officer killing an unarmed Black man, George Floyd, and that motivated people. And it was, I would say that there was a basic demand underlying that. In the demand was cops stop killing unarmed Black men, and that motivated people. The problem was it didn't go beyond that, right? It didn't get into what are the systemic causes of that. It didn't get into clear demands of how do we fix those things. And then digging even deeper, right? What's the problem in the system? How do we fix the system? And when you do those things, when you dig down to the root causes, you always come back to a corrupt government. It needs to be our government representing the 99%, and not representing, the billionaires. When Bernie took off, and, in retrospect, there's a lot of, what would you call it? Mixed bad feelings about Bernie. It doesn't seem like he was ever really real, but he does show an example. The Bernie movement shows an example of what can happen. And the reason Bernie took off was because his voice was so unusual and unique when he talked about the billionaires and the oligarchy. And yeah, they're trying to rekindle that now. And of course, Bernie's game is to talk about all that and do all that, and then redirect it back into the Democratic Party, into the uniparty, and that's what we need to prevent. But the lesson to learn is that it's possible to have a big movement, and that comes from those clear demands, directions of what needs to be done. And we've seen, different versions of that. And the recent protests for Gaza, for free Palestine, for those things, there is this clear underlying demand. I mean, not only stop, killing innocent people in Gaza, but to actually give real rights to the Palestinians, to give them their due, is kind of the clear underlying demand there. And that has funded, that has fueled a lot of energy. So, it's possible to have something big happen, but I would submit that it has to start with clear demands and go from there.
They need to be actionable demands. Circling back to the BLM movement as an example, the buzz phrase was defund the police, which in a general sense, I definitely agree with, but it's not really actionable. It doesn't really specify something. So like in an example like that, actionable demand would have been, let's say you're a city and you're outside the mayor's office and heckling the mayor every day to fire the police chief. Fire the police chief is an actionable demand. Defund the police is not really. I'm just using this as an example, but the demands need to be specific. They need.
And another one would be to have a civilian review board for police with real power.
Right. You have to have something very specific to demand, or else it runs the risk of becoming a hashtag, and that's it.
Yeah, especially when it comes to this actually goes into one of my questions as well, because demands are great, but demands without consequences, to me, is really just a request. So what consequences will be laid out for people, especially elected officials, if these demands are not met?
So that's where the numbers come in, right? If we don't have big numbers, then there's really not a lot we can do.
Yeah.
And so that's why that is that key challenge. If this thing starts taking off and starts growing, either this concept or one like it, I'd like to see it become kind of like a mind virus where, people are telling other people, and just this concept is spreading. We need a movement based on a clear set of actionable items. What would need to happen would be to be getting literally in the streets, right? To start in with direct actions, of saying, okay, here's our 11 demands. Not only are we not going to vote for you, politician, and your friends, your corrupt friends in the uniparty. First thing, we're going to call you out relentlessly everywhere, but we're going to be in the streets and mucking things up. It gets into the idea of strikes and general strikes, but it's going to have to start getting big and getting loud is what needs to happen. Now, it seems far-fetched, right, that anything like this could really happen. But, again, we have been seeing it. We've been seeing signs of it with the Free Palestine movement. That generated a lot of energy and got people in the streets. And we need to get into things like that, but wider and bigger.
The thing is, and I don't mean this in necessarily like a spicy way, but they need to be afraid of the public a lot more than they are now. And so the rallying cry is to create that coalition that they would be actually afraid of in terms of accountability, because as it stands right now, they're laughing at us.
Yeah.
And so in a practical sense, it can be, getting so many people together doing so much that it mucks up the works of the society, of business, right? it gets on the news. It becomes, a big thing. In an electoral way, I think one could make the argument that a big part of the reason why Kamala Harris lost that election was because of the Palestine issue, right? That was a clear demand. She had no interest in acceding to that demand, and it cost her electorally. And that's really all that, part of this whole thing is the realization that we are literally ruled by monsters. That these people in the uniparty, in these offices, especially at the federal level, they're monstrous. I mean, they don't care about us.
Extra hard to kill us all right now. So
there you go. And so, I would never advocate violence or anything close to that, but I would advocate general strikes, getting in the streets, getting in, and mucking up the works, and becoming such a problem that it has to be dealt with, that it has to be acceded to. And of course, electorally, what we'd like to see would be to make it impossible for anyone to get elected if they're not on board with the demands. That's the level that you want to be getting to, and, make them electorally afraid of us, for starters.
Yeah.
It's up to us, really. We can't be looking for heroes and leaders out there. There are a few that are good enough to take that mantle, but it's really up to us, every one of us, to be spreading the word and to be pushing this, and to be figuring out as a collective, as a consensus, how can we move this forward and grow this thing? That's the big challenge.
Yeah. So how do you square the circle, or how you can combine this with doing mutual aid on the ground? Like how would this come together with that?
One of the, I would say, an education component, in that I'd like to see a connection in that, and I believe this was the Black Panthers model, was that not only, it wasn't just about giving people stuff or helping people with stuff, it was also about the education. It was about, what is this all about? And so I think the 11 demands and the whole thing around that can help with that education aspect of saying, okay, we're trying to make this whole thing be part of a larger movement. And if you want to see what this larger movement is about, well, here's this clear list of demands of what we're shooting for. If you look on the 11 Demands Substack, I think there's kind of a growing library on there of articles that dig into what this is about and what we're trying to do. So I would see trying to make that kind of connection would be a good way to go.
Okay. Yeah. Because one of the things that I think that is the best thing is combine it with mutual aid, because mutual aid really is more than just giving things away to the people who need it. It's also using the education in order to be able to help the people to understand that why the system is the way it is and what can be done to help change the system. And it sounds like you're giving them the tools or the information of what could be, what we could have, even further beyond what they can see with their own eyes. It kind of makes me think of the quote that says, a person can see the end of the world before they see the end of capitalism. Well, you're kind of giving them the glasses, so to speak, to say, hey, you can't see this now, but look through this lens and then tell me what you see. And so then they get to see something that's more egalitarian and equitable for people, especially, in their different circumstances. And this is one of the things that we were talking about last night with Cash, is that, when people start to see, different groups or collectively that we have a win, then it wakes people up and they go, well, wait, if we're able to achieve this, what else can we do? And so do we really need the system at all? can we rebuild it anew? Because this system is, for all intents and purposes, is old. The lifetime of an empire is typically around 250 years. We're at 249. So I think out with the old and with the new, I think it's time for, it's kind of like I think it's kind of like in Iron Man 2 when Tony Stark said, prepare, Jarvis, we're going into hardware mode, and he started knocking down walls, right? It's the same thing. We got to start knocking down walls and renovate, right, the country from the foundation up. And I think that this gives you people the idea of what could be.
One of the key words I would say in all this is democracy. And one of the things that I think we have allowed the corporate oligarchy to do is to kind of muck with what that really means. Mm-hmm. And of course, we have this, Republican and Democratic parties that are anything but, real democracy. Mm-hmm. And, I think we need to come back to some of these core issues and really say whenever you have any organization of thousands and millions of people, right? How do you organize that? How do you make decisions? How does that function as a group? And there really is only one way that if it's going to be fair, if it's not going to be a dictatorship, it has to be some version of democracy. There really just is no other way. And so I would submit a big part of the task of what any left or populist left, any kind of big movement is trying to do is to actually democratize our government, to turn it finally into that real democracy that really represents the people. And so that's kind of why it's called, 11 demands for real democracy, is getting back to that. Like right now we have a democracy of dollars, right? The more dollars you have, the more votes you have. And so, there really is no other clear path, that I can see to fixing it, other than to fixing that core problem. Now it's a difficult road. It's a difficult task. It's a long shot to really that we're going to get anywhere with this. But then what is the alternate path that's more likely? What is the other route that's going to fix this stuff? If someone has that, I'm all ears. But I think this kind of path of focusing on these clear action items known as the demands. The other big one I'll put out there is MCDS, right? The MCDS framework, money, corruption, demand, solutions. I think if you take any given issue and put it in that framework, you get to a path that can get you somewhere if we can figure out or get through that key challenge of how do we get the numbers, right? How do we get enough people focused on that page, on that same page, focusing, on that path of how we get there. And so that's why, I keep coming back to it, right? As the key challenge, and I would say the way through that challenge is that it's up to us to be the spark, to be the core of this, and to spread it out and to just keep at it. But one thing, individually that anyone can do is to apply that MCDS to any given problem. So let's take like what's happening, in Palestine, right? I would submit you put that in the MCDS framework. You start with the money, right? What Israel is doing, it's a genocidal land grab at its core, right? Israel just wants all the land, all the resources, and they're ruthless about getting it. Why is that allowed to happen? Why does our government let that happen? Well, it's because our government is corrupt, the C to the MC. But, and we definitely need to call that out and relentlessly. But the big thing is we can't stop there. I feel like a lot of times, even people that I like on the left, when they talk about things, they get to that point, but then they kind of stop there. And so the next key part of that framework is to get to the D, the demand, because then you're saying, well, what is our demand? Well, our demand is that it stopped, right? The war stopped. But you get into like, well, why is that war and those things really happening? Well, it's because of the money and corruption, right? It ties back to, all wars are resource wars. Every bomb dropped, all these weapon systems, the Iron Dome. I mean, my joke is with the Iron Dome, right? The Iron Dome, it's not good at stopping missiles, but there is one thing that the Iron Dome is really, really good at. And that's making money for the MIC, for the defense contractors. The Iron Dome's really good at doing that. And so you have that recognition of what's really going on here. It's about the money and corruption. So then your demand, your first demand is to stop the wars. And then that leads to the core demand of decorrupt the government, get the money and the corruption out of there. And then that demand is tied into your solution, into the solution in this, in that we have to fix the money. We have to get into those real concrete steps of how we do that. We have to have masses of people in the streets demanding that we do that. And the corruption, fix the money, have a government that represents us instead of the current government that represents the corporate oligarchy and the war machine. That I think is the core.
Yeah, definitely. I do have a question in the chat that I would like to get into. Jacqueline asks, what about a massive consumer boycott to coincide with the general strike?
Definitely.
I love it.
Let's work on that. One of the parts, in doing all this stuff would be to be talking about these things, almost kind of workshopping these things, and how do we get from there to there. And it's always going to be down to the numbers. Can we get this thing big enough? So if you get a few million people in the streets, then all of a sudden anything becomes possible.
I mean, everybody's angry, right? I mean, both sides, all different ideologies, lots of anger. How do we rally that? Moment. How do we bring it together? I'm not going to claim to have, some magic answer to it, but, our attempt in doing this is to try to build that anger around this framework and try to turn that into actionable items. Hopefully we can help and do that.
Yeah, I think it also in coinciding with helping people, to understand, how necessary this is. I'm losing my thought because I'm getting old. But as far as, encouraging people to embrace this, of course, you can go on different shows like mine, and of course, Savvy, she has a much bigger net than I do. But as far as getting this out there, how can we spread the word even further for this? Because a lot of people tend to be more stuck on, we got to stay within the duopoly. We got to just vote our way out of this. And we have to choose between either dying by fire or dying by drowning, but we have to choose one. How do you kind of wrestle that mindset, from the people, and have them start looking for something that is actually more life-giving?
Yeah, I mean, it is, I guess it would be the hope of us for people that choose to take the 11 Demands pledge, which one of those pledges is to speak to your neighbors, speak to your friends, speak to your family, because really that's what's going to get through to people is when they hear think about it this way, the Republicans, they always go pro-LGBT when their son or daughter comes out or whatever. It needs to be personal to people. And so what I would say to that is, if it's coming from somebody that you care about, coming from your buddy, coming from whoever, you're much more likely to get on board with any of these things. So that's really our hope is that people that like this and want to take that pledge will do so.
And we can all have a role to play, right? Even someone with just a few friends, right, can talk to those friends about it and say, check this thing out. Let's try spreading the word. If you're online, if you're in chat, on somebody's show. You can be saying, one of the biggest things, right, that you can just put in the chat that I'll just put in sometimes is, what are our demands? If a lefty host is talking about something, or any kind of host is talking about something, and they're laying out, okay, this sucks and they suck and this thing is terrible and whatnot. Okay, then what is the demand? So anyone, you know, who's in the collective can be in the chat and doing that. If they're on Zoom calls or whatnot, you know, put it into that. What is our demand? Of course, anyone who's a host, of course, you know, we want on board, and we'd love to see really putting it in that framework and talking about it and highlighting it and saying, look, let's take a shot at this, at getting together behind this clear set of demands and making this a thing. If someone is running for office, of course, and, you know, I think we have some really good Green Party candidates running. Andy Ellis, who's one I definitely highlight because he has signed on to, you know, 11 Demands Collective. His name is right on there, and we can like we can show the list of like who's in there so far. So anybody like that, you know, we can have discussions with and whatnot, and make sure that they're on board with it, and that it's a consensus of these ideas of how it comes together. Yeah, so it's really up to us. The other thing we can be working on is having live streams and having kind of workshopping streams is something that Corey and I have been kicking around, the idea of how to do that and how to have something like that work, and just yeah, it's these different ways, and you know, it's how do we spread the word, how do we get something going and make it real. The whole thing is designed to kind of run on consensus. So, you know, we're always looking for ideas and input. One place also that these kind of discussions can happen is on Sabby Sab's show. About once a week, we do the Zoom hangout call-in after the show, and we can be discussing things there. So if people want to have ideas and they want to, you know, talk them out, get in touch with us, or questions, you know, that's also a good place for that.
Yeah. I think I also view it just as a personal challenge to keep fighting, keep doing something. Eric is a lot more optimistic than me. I am constantly fighting apathy and cynicism. I'm sure I'm not the only one. But yeah, we just got to keep fighting, and this is our way of doing it. And you know, we hope that other people are interested in it also.
You know, I think that's one of the things, is keeping our revolutionary optimism, because I think that is what's most important. A lot of times we get stuck in the apathy and cynicism because, right, the night is darkest before the dawn, right? And I think one of the best ways is, and maybe people will look at me like, you know, you're looking through rose-colored glasses, but it is what it is. I fantasize about high-speed rail. I fantasize about everybody being housed. I literally fantasize about being able to go on vacation and sip a nice cool drink on the beach of Gaza. I fantasize about stuff like that. You know what I mean? And don't be afraid to fantasize about a better future. Because my thing is like, yes, our anger is good in order to give us that energy to drive us to do something better, but also our joy and our happiness can also drive us too. I say utilize both in order to be able to push us forward. So sometimes our hopes and our dreams are also just as good of a fuel to push us for something better. Because I would love to see a nationalized healthcare system, right? And I imagine what that would look like. So sometimes our imagination is something that could be a useful tool. Now I'm starting to sound like Mr. Rogers, but you know, go into the world of imagination. You
Make it a
know,
beautiful day in the neighborhood.
yeah. You know,
No, it's important because these things are possible. We have enough wealth, resources, technology to have everybody have a good standard of living. I also totally agree with you on that. It's just as far as car culture and the way that our cities and towns are built, dependence on cars and no public transit. That's a big thing. I'm very jealous of the rail system in Japan. But yeah, these things are absolutely possible. But not so long as we have these, resource hoarding, sociopathic billionaires. So that gets down into, the money and the corruption being the first thing that we target and the thing that we always come back to.
Like we can all have nice things, or we can have billionaires. So, it's time to make the choice. And I think it's important as kind of a lefty movement that we do paint that picture of what does a better world look like. Yes, we have to call out everything that's bad and be very critical and be relentless when it comes to calling out that money and corruption. But then we also have to say, what does a better world look like? I think that a lot of what's in 11 demands, paints that picture. We're demanding these things. And, one way I think of framing it that can perhaps give us hope is that as terrible as our government is right now, and it is just I think we've all anyone who's been paying attention the last few years is really pretty amazed at how bad it's gotten. Like just the level of just terribleness, whether it's Gaza, whether it's the healthcare system, whether it's the way the politics operates and whatnot. So right now our government is terrible. Our government is basically an evil actor, an evil force in the world, right? It is that bad. I mean, that's part of this whole thing is kind of making sure that people know, it is that bad. Conversely, if we can climb this mountain, if we can get to this point where our government flips and becomes a government that does represent the people, that isn't totally corrupt, that government that operates that way, that's really working for the 99%, could do incredible things. that government could look after everyone. You talk about in the 11 demands a minimum standard of living, a government operating for us and not the billionaires could do that easily. And homelessness, have a real healthcare system. The resources are there. It's sitting right there waiting for us. That government would become a good force in the world that would stop wars from happening, that would feed people, that would resource people in the world with real sources, not loans. And so I think that's the hope. That's the vision to paint, that it is possible to flip it. And if we do flip it, anything becomes possible.
Yeah, definitely. I want to share this really quick video because when I saw this earlier today, it made me think of, instead of being in despair, wishing something positive upon the people who are around us. And I just want to share this. It will tug at your heartstrings, but I think that when I see this kid, I dream of a much better future. Instead of being sad, number one, I hope that this kid gets, the help that they need. But I also want them to have a much brighter future, which can be provided by those of us who are adults. So I just want to share this really quick. This is about this kid is just talking about being homeless at 17.
Oh no, I ain't been speaking out on it or nothing like that. But right now, folks, I'm homeless at 17. And I don't know if I could tell, folks, but I'm crying right now because I got mixed emotions. I don't know if I want to cry or laugh right now. Like y'all know, I'm a kid right now, and my family ain't always been in the best financial situation. So, I ain't always had everything or whatever growing up, everything I wanted. So once I got my hands on some little money, I was trying to help. You see what I'm saying? I'm trying to help everybody. Ain't nobody trying to help me, bro. I'm out here alone. I ain't even had no time to think about what's going on in my life. I just gotta stay on the move, bro. Every day, I gotta figure out, folks, where I'm finna lay my head at, bitch, where I'm finna eat, where I gotta do this and all that, folks. I ain't even had no time to think. I'm just not thinking about this shit. I've been homeless for about damn near a week now. I'm just now crying about this shit. I ain't had no time to even develop my feelings for this shit, folks. I just gotta keep going. even family, friends, and all. Even my family, some of them know I don't got nowhere to go. For what y'all think I'm finna go? I'm 17. What the fuck y'all think I'm finna do? What I'm supposed to do out here? I gotta depend on somebody till at least next year so I could get a house in my name. I can't even do that right now. I'm fucked. I hate that I had to be put in this position. Like, why I had to be born into this shit? I ain't do shit wrong to nobody. Alone, folks. I'm alone, folks. I don't got nobody to talk to about shit. I can't go to nobody and talk to them about nothing, folks. Real life. Just gotta deal with this shit, folks. I just gotta deal with it, bro. And that motherfucker always got so much to say, bro. And they don't know my position, folks. They don't know my shit, folks. So for y'all who don't know.
So
yeah, it's absolutely heartbreaking, and society is failing that young man and many young men. Yeah, it just speaks to the deep evil sociopathy. Also, homelessness is a trap. Once you are homeless, it is extremely hard to get out of that. I've done homeless outreach and stuff for work. If you deal with a lot of unhoused people and you talk to them, you'll find that they have had different housing placements over time. They always get bounced at. Once you're in that kind of, underclass, let's call it, you really can't get out. You can't even get a government ID without having an address. That's something very, very difficult for unhoused people that don't have an ID. Also, unhoused people are dealing with people on the streets that might have their own issues, violence, getting their stuff taken all the time. It is just a complete and absolute trap. And it's really fucked. It really is.
mhm. Yeah. And so the reason why I wanted to show that is because this is the reality. And somebody will look at him and say, well, you're a young man. Go ahead and get a job and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Not thinking about what he just said, that he can't even get himself a place to live until he's 18. What about the mental health of this young man? June is not only Pride Month, but it's also mental health awareness month. What about that boy? You know what I mean? A nationalized healthcare system would be there to make sure that his mental health is in check. These lists of demands that are put out would make sure that this young man doesn't ever have to worry about food, housing, transportation, things like that. And so it's using experiences like that young man as fuel to push for something better. Because a lot of times, those of us who have been through what he's going through, trust me, I know, let your compassion be your fuel. That's what I said. Let your compassion be your fuel. Because, it's definitely not what's fueling the corporate dictators, the oligarchs. There's no compassion there. Or if they think it is some perverted version that they think it is when it really isn't. If you guys have time, I do have a question to share with you guys.
Sure.
Okay, so this one's from Roger, our good friend Roger Meadows. He actually asked this question. He said, question, which route do you plan on taking to get the amendment through Congress, passing it with a 2/3 in both chambers and sending it to the states with 38 states signing off on ratification, or 2, start and end it with the states with an Article 5 Constitutional Convention of the states calling for the convention, proposing it to the states and 38 states ratifying it? Which one do you choose? What is the plan to get there?
So, I mean, one of the things that I think is we need to be wary of is getting too caught up in the details, or too caught up in the particular tools of how this happens. Yeah, a constitutional amendment by either path is a big lift, and it always comes back to the same thing. Either of those paths are very difficult that Roger talks about. Those are the two ways that you can get an amendment done, and this would tie into a major part of fixing the money and corruption is the move to amendment style constitutional amendment to say money's not speech, money's not speech, corporations are not people. And that would open up the door to a lot of campaign finance management and whatnot. If we can get enough people on board and turn this into a large, millions of people, large movement, then either one of those paths are possible. We can be pursuing, one or both. Move to amend. The organization is out there, working on this. We can be working with them. I think personally, they need to be a little more hard nosed about what they're doing. But there's, their amendment is really good. But we need the number. It comes back to the numbers. Like you need to build this thing up. If we don't do that, then it doesn't really matter which path we're choosing, because neither is going to happen if we don't have the numbers. If we do have the numbers, then we can be working on both paths or form a consensus to one path or the other. We basically, need to be working on. I mean, this almost sounds kind of crazy when you come out and say it, but we basically need to be replacing every current member of Congress. Mm-hmm. Like right now, we have 0 friends in there. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe, if we get a big movement going and we start, getting better Congress people, more Greens, more independents in there, then maybe we'll see enough movement where maybe some of them, will say, okay, maybe we can support you, the 11 demands movement, because you're on board and whatnot. Although we always look at you with a side eye, but that's the kind of politics we need to get to.
As for me, law is used to suppress people. Law is used as a weapon. Most of the time, you need a law degree to be bar admitted to even understand what's going on. I prefer not to work within their system. I think that system is rigged. I prefer to focus on civil disobedience, strikes, boycotts, getting in the streets, enforcing it that way. We're not going to win if we play within their laws. It's not going to happen.
Okay. So
and we want to do both, united by the clear set of demands.
So my question to amend, part of that is, what about starting off with city council?
I think it's great. I think if people have the ability to get elected to their city council and to, go by these principles and to be, an independent voice, I think that's great.
We have the same problem at all levels of government. The money and the corruption. Like I don't think you can find a level of government in this country where the money and corruption is not a big problem. Maybe if you get down to, little towns or something, you might find where it's not as much. But basically, it's the same issue, right? It's the big money and corporate interests are using their wealth and resources to corrupt the elected lawmakers who should be representing us. So instead, they represent them. So at all levels of government, it's about calling out, identifying the problem, and gathering enough people up and enough of a movement to push through real changes. And what those changes look like are laid out by the clear demands.
Yeah, it is everywhere. Where I live in Quincy, Massachusetts, they are currently spending $1 million to build a statue for the police, which could be used. Yeah, seriously. They're building a new police and fire station, and they've spent $1 million building, I think it's a St. Michael or whatever statue, patron saint of law enforcement or whatnot. That money could be spent much more judiciously somewhere else, but it just kind of brings to the point of just how it's broken at all levels.
With homeless people in the city and they're spending money on a statue?
Yes, sir.
I guess they can sleep under the statue. Jesus.
See,
But
this
yeah,
is
that's
the
how,
type
you know,
of stuff
that's
that
part of
this
this
is not
whole
a small
thing. This is
city.
how
that's
bad
going
it
to get me canceled on my channel. This is the type of stuff that makes me want to get deplatformed. I'm gonna keep it cool, keep it cool. Boy, you
Yeah,
better
this is
than me
part of
right
the whole
now.
thing. This is how bad it's gotten.
Your government hates you. Your government hates you.
Yes.
Well,
That is
the
just
people in those seats right now hate you. If we get real people who are not implacably corrupt in those seats, then you could have a government that loves you. But you know, it's a hard lift, but that's the goal.
yeah. So, you know what? Look, if you guys have not already, go ahead and take the demands pledge, the 11 demands pledge. Go ahead and look at the set of demands first. Go ahead and look at the set of demands first. If it's something that you can rock with, then hey, take the pledge, and then communicate it with your family, your friends, right? Your girlfriend, the person who grooms your dog, or grooms your cat. Hey, I don't judge if you have a cat groomer. Hey, that's cool too. But the thing is ultimately is people learning, that they have more power than they realize, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, it's up to us. But like what you called out are definitely good. I mean, these is kind of the call to action at this point, is to try to see how big we can grow this. What can we do with it, and take it from there.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, and if anybody is in New England, encourage anybody to come to any of the events that Savvy Sabs puts on, or any of the mutual aid events, or we're out at different actions. So if this is the region that you live in, come on and hang out with us and get involved.
All right, pull up and pull through. Bring some supplies while you at it. Okay, thank you guys so much. Please let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, so you got my my website on the screen there, Eric T. Red, or especially 11 Demands. That is one thing that I'm glad it's gotten to, is that it is a kind of a brand, right? 11 Demands. You can put it out there to people. Just look up 11 Demands. It will actually come up on Google, which is pretty cool. And let's work with it, take it from there. And of course, I'll see you on Savvy's show. We'll be live tonight at 7 Eastern time.
I don't have social media. You can find me punching the air somewhere in Boston.
Or in the Savvy Sabs chat.
Same. Corey, I see you.
Got you.
All right, guys. I'll see you guys in Savvy's chat a little bit later.
All right. Peace and love.
All right. Thanks, JB.
All right. Take care, guys.
soon.
Bye-bye. Okay. Well, that was a great conversation. If you guys have not already, I already put the 11 Demands pledge in the chat for you guys. And I think I got it in the description already. If not, then I'll put it in there afterwards. But I'll have it in the description as well for you guys. But thank you so very much to Eric and Corey for joining to talk about that. I think it's a very important and worthy conversation to have. If you guys have not already, go ahead and please give a like to the stream. Helps me out very much. Thank you so very much. Now, so while we're at it, we're going to be continuing on in the show. But first, I would like to go and say a big thank you to all the patrons on Patreon, because, well, they're the ones who literally keep the lights on. So let's get into that. So I just want to thank all the patrons on Patreon. For without you guys, I would not be able to have this channel or be able to do this work. You guys literally make this happen. So let's go through the tiers, shall we? So we have Mega Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters. We have Comrades, Solidarity, and JB members. And to all future members, thank you so very much for keeping the lights on all around me. Thank you so very much to all of you. And just to let you guys know, my channel is demonetized. So if you like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. For that, I thank you from the top and bottom of my heart. Thank you. Let's get into the chat. Sarah, hello. Sarah, salutations, as well as let's answer some stuff, shall we? All right. So, starting off with Jacqueline says, it's my grandson's 12th birthday today. Well, happy birthday to Jacqueline's grandson, 12 years old. That is a wonderful year. And I hope that the next 96 years are wonderful. So thank you so very much, Jacqueline, for being in here. Yes, happy birthday. All right, we have Eve coming in saying, hey. All right, CBC voter coming in saying happy Tuesday at JB and Eric T. Red. And don't forget Corey. Corey's always also in here too. Thank you so very much. Kate Max says, hey, everyone, this is going to be a great show with JB and Eric T. Red and the 11 demands. Absolutely. Thank you very much for the Pink Handwave Soul Construct coming in. All right. We have Jacqueline coming in saying, hey, Jaybefaunt, hey, Eric T. Red, and hey, everyone. We have Eric T. Red that came in the chat and say, hi, we are here. Hey. All right. We have Luke Carlos coming in saying, hello, all solidarity. Yes. Luke Carlos up in here with the solidarities. Thank you so very much. Corey came in and said, happy birthday to your grandson, Jacqueline. Okay. Yes. Spreading the love. I love it. We have Lex coming in saying, JB, Eric's wife, Corey's mom here. Nice to meet you. You look terrific. Thank you very much. So glad you're on the mend. Try adding a tiny bit of cayenne or something spicy to your lemon zest tea. Great for anti-inflammatory. Cheers. I'm going to try that because I can't. I used to do ginger, but I can't do it anymore because it interacts with the medications now. But I could try a little bit of cayenne. I also have red pepper flakes in my cupboard too. I'll try either. I'll try the cayenne. So just a dash. All right. Thank you so very much. Butch says, revolutionaries organize against systems. We are revolutionaries. Absolutely. Thank you so very much. Also, another thing he said, he taught me, is the phrase, who funds you runs you. So yeah, that was a great one. Jacqueline says, what were the demands made by the recent No Kings protests or parades? Baby, I'm trying to wonder that myself. I don't even know. I'm as confused as you are, Jacqueline. Like, what were the demands that were raised by the No Kings protest? Oh, Trump bad? Okay, tell me something I don't know. Right? And by the way, while we're at it, people who are like, oh my God, No Kings protest. Okay, but y'all were willing to also, not you, but the people, some of the people were willing to vote for a queen. Did I stutter? I may have a little bit, but that was not intentional. But we didn't want a queen either. And what did she say? We're going to have the strongest fighting force in the world. So here's the thing. That's the problem. A lot of people are looking at Donald Trump and saying, oh, we wouldn't be going through this if it were Kamala. Yes, you would. Yes, you would. And guess what? Would there be as many of you out in the streets? Maybe. But she'd be doing the same thing. Doesn't matter. Both of them, both parties would be doing the same thing. Now, there was a candidate that had ballot access that had enough to be able to get to 270 electoral college votes and was completely on the opposite side, that was anti-imperialist as well as anti-war. But a lot of y'all who were at that protest said, well, no, we don't want to go with her because she can't win. Now you have MAGA with buyer's remorse. And now you have blue MAGA out here going, well, we should have elected the lady that was actually going to help cause this World War III because, equality. No, they're both horrible. Meanwhile, you had a lady that was well qualified, to be honest with you, that was going to make sure that Gaza was free. Those of you who are more focused on domestic issues, things like housing for all, things like universal health care, things like pushing for worker cooperatives, all these different things that we as Americans would need in order to be able to survive so that our money's not going to all these other foreign wars and they would keep it at home here. Yeah, we had that person, but y'all were like, well, she can't win. And now we're all about to lose because either way, if you would have went with blue fascists or red fascists, we're all about to lose because we're about to go into World War III. Congratulations. And here's my thing. If you regret your decision, great. Great. That means you have a conscience. But if you don't regret your decision, let that be on your conscience, if you have one. Man. Eid says, our hands off and no kings are funded by Indivisible, and Indivisible funds go to the Democrats. Everything Act Blue does. Yep. There's a reason why, a lot of the actual left mutual aid groups, there were a number of them that didn't go to the No Kings protests because it was like they're not actually fighting to change the system. They're just mad at Trump. Don't get me wrong. Trump is horrible. Absolutely. But what are you doing to change the system? If I hate a particular company, am I just going to come back when there's a different coworker? The worker in the red uniform I don't like, but the worker in the blue uniform I'm willing to deal with, even though the company itself is horrible. So you're just going to keep going back to the company, even though there's a different worker standing there with a different color uniform? Does that make any sense to you? People just, they're peculiar bunch. Let me see. Amanda coming in saying, I've sort of been paying attention, sort of been cutting in and out because I've been watching on my phone and talking to AI about the 11 demands, a continuation of a conversation I had earlier. Very nice. Notori is in the chat giving hearts and love. Thank you so very much. Fine Weather says your incredulity is harsh, JB. Well, he's using big words. Now I got to look up the definition. Damn it. Incredulity. The state of being unwilling or unable to believe something. Okay. Yes, it is harsh. But you know what? Blame the system. That's why. All right. And Kate Max said, yeah, they just protest but no demands. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the problem. Like while protesting has two things. It creates awareness and it can link you with people who also are like-minded within, the same fight. But that's where it stops, right? Outside of that, that's as far as protesting goes. when it comes to actually organizing to push the system, it doesn't do more than that. Just 1 second. Let me finish this from Audre Lorde. Audre Lorde says, when we disagree with one another about the solution to a particular problem, we were often far more vicious to each other than to the originators of our common problem. Historically, difference has been used so cruelly against us that we were reluctant to tolerate any division from what was externally defined as Blackness. In the 60s, political correctness became not a guide for living, but a new set of shackles. Unity implies the coming together of elements which are, to begin with, varied and diverse in their particular natures. Our persistence in examining the tensions within diversity encourages growth towards our common goal. So often we either ignore the past or romanticize it, render the reason for unity useless or mythic. We forget that the necessary ingredient needed to make the past work for the future is our energy in the present, metabolizing one into the other. Continuity does not happen automatically, nor is it a passive process. But any future vision which can encompass all of us, by definition, must be complex and expanding, not easy to achieve. The answer to cold is heat. The answer to hunger is food. There's no simple monolithic solution to racism, to sexism, to homophobia. There's only the conscious focusing within each of my days to move against them. Wherever I come up against these particular manifestations of the same disease, by seeing who the we is, we learn to use our energies with greater precision against our enemies rather than against ourselves. We share a common interest, survival, and it cannot be pursued in isolation from others simply because their differences make us uncomfortable. We know what it is to be lied to. There is no Black person here who can afford to wait to be led into passive action for survival. Each one of us must look clearly and closely at the genuine particulars, conditions of their life and decide where action and energy is needed and where it can be effective. Change is the immediate responsibility of each of us, wherever and however we are standing in whatever arena we choose. We who are Black are at an extraordinary point of choice within our lives. To refuse to participate in the sharp shaping of our future is to give it up. Do not be misled into passivity, either by false security, they don't mean me, or by despair, there's nothing we can do. Each of us must find our work and do it. Militancy no longer means guns at high noon, if it ever did. It means actively working for change, sometimes in the absence of any certainty that change is coming. It means doing the unromantic and tedious work necessary to forge meaningful coalitions. And it means recognizing which coalitions are possible and which coalitions are not. It means knowing that coalition, like unity, means the coming together of whole, self-actualized human beings, focused in believing, not fragmented automatons marching to a prescribed step. It means fighting despair. How are you practicing what you preach? Whatever you preach, and who exactly is listening? As Malcolm stressed, Malcolm X, we are not responsible for our oppression, but we must be responsible for our own liberation. It is not going to be easy, but we have what we have learned and what we have been given that is useful. We have the power those who came before us have given us to move beyond a place where they were standing. We have the trees and the water and the sun and our children. Malcolm X does not live in the dry texts of his words as we read them. He lives in the energy we generate and use to move along the visions we share with him. We are making the future as well as bonding to survive the enormous pressures of the present. And that is what it means to be part of history. So essentially, that's part of what some of the things that Audre Lorde was speaking about is also, coming together as a people, even though we may not agree completely on everything. There's a lot that we can't agree on. We find those things and we work on those things together within reason, of course, because I'm not going to sit there and, work with somebody who wants my demise as somebody who wears different, hats intersectionally. But of course, there may be some people that we may have some disagreement with. But when it comes to the things that was laid out, for instance, with Eric and Corey for the 11 demands, a lot of people can get on board with those things. And sometimes we sometimes may have to sit with our discomfort as we ride along in this car towards liberation. So, yeah. All right, so I'm going to check on the Rumble chat just to see if we have any Rumble rants. And we don't have any Rumble rants, but Corona Ursa says 100% JB. Thank you very much, Corona Ursa. Thank you so very much for being in chat. And you see, I don't see anybody at present that's in the Kick chat, but thank you very much for that. Now, let's get into the rest of the show, shall we? So, we already talked with Eric and Corey about the demands pledge. So, we got into that. Next, we're going to be getting into Dave Smith calls for impeachment. So, this one is going to be very interesting, that I want to get into, especially in regards to what he said to Crystal and Sagar in regards to Donald Trump and his latest actions. So I want to get into that. But first, we shall talk about what he said beforehand. So we're going to get into Trump must be impeached and removed from office. So let's get into it. So Dave Smith is a comedian, but a lot of people in the political circles know him as a libertarian that basically expressed concern over Donald Trump, but ultimately said that he's going to be voting for him. And so while many of us were warning someone like Dave Smith over his, willingness to vote for Trump, even though we also were sounding the warning for voting for Kamala Harris, I think it's important that we look at what Dave Smith had said, especially before Trump got elected, so that we can get context into the mind of Dave Smith. So let's get into this really quick. Share this right here. And then we shall move forward. So here's Dave Smith here.
Oh, listen, man. And I just want to preface this by saying this is not me walking back the things that I said on yesterday's episode. I still stand by everything I said there, but I think I might vote for Trump.
Wow. That's a bombshell of breaking news.
I'll tell you what it did. And it's funny because literally when we finished the show yesterday, just like an hour after we were done recording or something like that, I was just literally just on Twitter and I saw Kamala Harris campaigning with Liz Cheney. And I'll play you the clip in a second. And I was just so disgusted by it that it was just like, oh, fuck you. Like, God damn, do you just deserve to lose? Like, as if there's already enough reasons. And listen, if I'm not even trying to make like a big thing out of this, like I'm making an announcement that I'm supporting Trump or anything like that. And I don't even fucking know. It'll probably, like, I'm registered. It'll probably depend on how I'm feeling. You know what I mean? Like, but there's just, it's like nothing. I'm not changing anything. I'm not like a Trumper now, and I'm going to continue to criticize Donald Trump at every turn where I feel like he deserves it. It just was like, oh man, this thing just disgusted me so much, dude. Did you? I don't know. By the way, have you?
Hang on 1 second. Let me make this point. So, while yes, Kamala Harris campaigning alongside Liz Cheney is deplorable. The Cheneys are deplorable, right? Yes, right? Red line. I get it, right? But you're talking about the same guy that had John Bolton in his administration. And yet you're thinking he's going to be better? I mean, you literally had a libertarian candidate that you could have voted for. And yet you said, I think I'm going to vote for Trump. You're a libertarian, though. Hell, if you wanted to go, somebody who was anti-war, there was Dr. Joe Stein. There was Claudia de la Cruz. There was Jasmine Sherman. There was Dr. Cornel West. There were quite a few who were anti-imperialist that actually were against this. You fell for Donald Trump's rhetoric during the campaign. How many of us warned you about the duopoly? You yourself are not even in the duopoly. You're a registered libertarian, and you fell for the duopoly? You fell for their BS? You fell for the good cop, bad cop routine? The only thing is flipped, where Trump is the good cop and Harris is the bad cop. You fell for that? No, I'm not going to say that, because that would be too mean. Fuck it. That's like a dog returning to his own vomit. The fuck, Dave? What the hell? You know who Trump is. And the thing is, people are like, oh, well, Trump never started any new wars. But he didn't that either. Remember when he had Qasem Soleimani murdered an Iranian general who was fighting ISIS? He was fighting terrorists, and Donald Trump had him murdered. Donald Trump killed Qasem Soleimani, someone who was bringing stability to the region. And you're now saying that, well, he's better than Harris. You fell for the okie doke. Yeah, that's what you did. You fell for it. Look, Eric is right. You fell for the okie doke. And now you're eating crow all up and down the internet. Let me continue this just, for context sake. But Dave, you fell for it, bro.
You seen this clip, Rob? Kamala Harris talking about World War II?
I don't think so. But
All right.
I'm going to suggest, while you're endorsing Trump, I'm going to suggest the viewers do what I do, which is just show up and pull a bunch of levers and see what happens.
That's another strategy. Listen, there's arguments to all of these strategies. No, I mean, I'm still so goddamn frustrated with Donald Trump, and not for any of the reasons that other people are frustrated with Donald Trump. I hate Donald Trump for opposite reasons that the entire corporate media hates him. And it is, and look, man, people could criticize me. Maybe this is You know, like there's an argument where people will be like, oh, you libertarians, you always love to feel like you're better than everybody else. And so you could kind of like say like, oh, well, I rise above all of this and I'm better than the Democrats and the Republicans. But if you don't ever actually get in the fight, then you're like, you're just patting yourself on the back while nothing changes. No, like there is an argument to that. There's also, I think, an equally strong argument where libertarians can come back and say like, yeah, but what does falling in line with the Republicans do? Does that ever actually lead to anything? Or does that, you know what I mean? Like at a certain point, there has to be a line and you're like, okay, beyond this line, I just can't support you. And for Donald Trump, lockdowns and keeping Fauci on the job and Yemen and Israel and Iran, and there's just like the government spending, and there's just a lot of them that it's like, I just kind of can't forgive him for. But at the same time, man, just seeing like, it's not just that the Cheneys like endorsed Kamala Harris. It's that like she is actively embracing that endorsement and campaigning with Liz Cheney to attempt to rehabilitate the Cheney legacy or something like that. And that is just, oh my God. I mean, like, really, the people who ruined the 21st century, that's who you're embracing. It's like a bridge too far is an understatement. It's just like,
you might as well campaign to fart in my mouth.
Yeah, I prefer it. I prefer it.
And yet you decided to go with Donald Trump because you did the lesser of two evils argument, Dave. You're a third party voter and you just did the lesser of two evils argument? Let me ask you something, Dave. And this was actually a really good question by Nick, my comment on RBN on Twitter. Trump's second term means he's a lame duck president. So if you're giving him the presidency, how can you hold him accountable once he has your vote? You can't threaten him by going, oh, well, we just won't vote for you for a third term. Because there is no third term. That ended with FDR. There is no third term. How are you going to hold him accountable now? You shot yourself in the foot, Dave. This is the issue with the lesser evil voting now. And so now he said this. Now he has to eat his words. Now there's egg on his face. Egg on his face. This is crazy. Okay, so we got a little bit of a backstory that and also, by the way, he defended his decision up and down when Nick of RBN actually went after him. Because Nick held his feet to the fire, right? Make sure that I get to that as well, because there's a lot going on right now, as we can see. So let me share this as well, because Dave Smith evolved or devolved, whichever you want to call it.
Or the illegal.
Let's go. It's 2019.
I would be very happy for to see Donald Trump impeached for the illegal, immoral, borderline war of genocide that he's been helping the Saudis conduct in Yemen. Even grading on a curve. He is a war criminal who deserves to be tried and buried under the prison, just right alongside Barack Obama and George W. Bush and John McCain and all the rest of them. Let me just say this real quick. Donald Trump should be in prison for war crimes for what he did to the people of Yemen. How's that for taking on the right? You're just defending your Democratic president. I actually stand on principle. Lockdowns and keeping Fauci on the job and Yemen and Israel and Iran, and there's just like the government spending, and there's just a lot of them that it's like I just kind of can't forgive him for. But I think I might vote for Trump. Yeah, Donald Trump. Listen, man, I supported him this last year. I apologize for doing so. It was a bad calculation at the time. It seemed like the right one, but he should be impeached and removed for this one.
Wow. That was a flip. And the thing is, it's like, what was it a moment of weakness? Because he was on the right side most of the time. But then in 2024, he allowed the good cop, bad cop routine to work on him. You were better off going with the libertarian candidate. You were better off just voting for them. Instead, you went with the duopoly. How many of your viewers or listeners were influenced by you and made the same decision? Now, I'm not saying it would have moved the needle, but at the same time, I mean, you're looking a little less credible now. And the left warned you. We warned you time and time again. Dave, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You're going the wrong direction. Danger, Will Robinson, danger. And you decided to go and vote for the guy. And now, look at you. You see something. Okay. And let's get into this as well. Here is Dave Smith on April 1st of this year. He was priming himself up. He primed himself up for this. Let's go.
And they were like, they'll probably cheer him on if he launches a war in Iran. And then I saw one guy underneath that said, he goes, I know Dave Smith sure will. And okay, it's just like a comment on Twitter, but I was just like blown away. And I'm not blown away by much, but I was like, does anybody actually thinks I would, just because I'm like, well, I did support this guy, so I'll rationalize and like defend getting in another war in the Middle East? Is that, but just for anyone who may have that, I will say this. If Donald Trump actually does launch a war in Iran, not only will I not support it, I will apologize for the rest of my life for voting for the guy. That undoes any positive that might have come out of this. So just to be clear on that, it would be the most disastrous policy. And I just can't even believe, I mean, maybe that guy didn't even mean it, but I can't believe anyone would think like, that somehow we're now in the business of just sucking up to Donald Trump. Fuck that. I was as sharp as goddamn critic in his first 4 years. I was a pretty sharp critic for the next 4 years after that. And I supported him this time because it just seemed like in the moment we had two options and one was clearly preferable.
So he played the lesser of two evils argument. He fell for it. He fell for the lesser evil. That's how the duopoly works. Dave knows this. The duopoly will make it so that one side seems just slightly better So then you have to go with that one. Bro, you're literally at a Pizza Hut KFC combo restaurant. And instead of avoiding the restaurant altogether, you go, well, I don't like the person that works behind the counter at the Pizza Hut side, so I'm going to go to the KFC side. Even though it's in the same restaurant, you're paying the same people, you're paying the same owner for the same shit. And then guess what? Now you're surprised that the food that you still got behind the counter is terrible? Because it's all the same kitchen? Well, what? You're supposed to know better. Dave, bro, you blowing minds right now. How are you better than anybody else who goes, well, I'm just going to have to hold my nose and vote for Kamala Harris? How are you any better? Now you're on an apology tour saying, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have voted for Trump. When people gave you warning after warning after warning after warning, and you were like, well, he's slightly better. You believed him. Your credibility is called into question now. Called into question. So why should your audience believe you next time? Why? You have to be ultra critical with these people. You do not trust the duopoly. Do not. Why in the hell you think I barely said a word about Zoran Mandami? Baby, because as long as he's running a duopoly, I'm looking at him with a side eye. You know what I'm saying? You didn't do the same thing for Trump? Wow, Dave, wow.
But I have no loyalty toward Trump or anyone in his cabinet or anything about the administration. I have loyalty to my principles and my country and my family.
They all make that argument. I'm not loyal to Kamala Harris, but she's just marginally better. She's just marginally better. You're making the same argument for Trump. They don't give a rat's ass if you're loyal to them or not. They just want you to vote for the duopoly. They just want you to make a choice where the choices that they put in front of you, it's like either choose this or choose that. Either choose die by drowning or die by fire, by burning. And you chose one of the two. Meanwhile, the rest of us who are post-duopoly are going, don't choose the third option. Don't die at all. And you fell for either or. Well, if I die by drowning, then I might get suffocated. But if I die by burning, then I'll still be able to breathe. At least I'll be able to wave the fire away or try to put it out. I need y'all to think critically here, man.
But none of that leads towards supporting a war in Iran. Okay, go ahead, Rob. Anything you want to?
And now look at where we're at. Look, baby, let me tell you right now. Benjamin Netanyahu is basically dragging America by the nostrils to go to war with Iran because they decided to throw the first punch, and now they're like, oh, big brother America, please save me. And America's like, all right, I got you. Meanwhile, Iran's sitting there ready to rock our shit. Iran don't play. They don't play. And now, bro, Jesus Christ. Let me see this. I'm gonna share this with y'all because this is wild to me. And this is also directed at Dave Smith because Dave Smith, you should know better. To everybody, what part of Leave the Duopoly did some of y'all not understand? Now you got egg on your face seeing your MAGA daddy pick a fight with Iran and risking us into world war. When we said he was like Biden and Harris, we meant that shit. Now look, here's what Donald Trump said on Truth Social. He said, Iran should have signed the deal I told them to sign. What a shame and a waste of human life. Simply stated, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I said it over and over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. Let me tell you something right now. Him saying something like that is the most reckless thing I have heard in a long ass time. And so basically, he's drawing a line in the sand and making it sound like he's ready to take military action against Iran on behalf of Israel. And if that happens, guess what? It's not going to be a regional war. It's going to be a world war because we know that countries like North Korea are now going to be assisting Iran with their side of the fight. And so Donald Trump, who said he would be a peace president, who claimed that he wasn't going to start any new wars, well, guess what? Here you go. Trump voters, is this your man? Is this your man? Because some of y'all see Donald Trump, I see Kamala Harris in drag. And I would say the exact same thing if it was Kamala Harris president, because you know damn well she would have did the same thing. She might even say it a little differently, but she would have did the same thing. Because I would have said that she's Donald Trump in drag. Look, right there. I said every person who said that Donald Trump would be an anti-war president is looking real stupid right now. Even some who considered themselves to be on the left who said he'd be better than Harris. Newsflash, he's no different than Harris. Anyone who told you otherwise was bullshitting you. And yes, I mean that. Some people who consider themselves to be on the left even made a case for Donald Trump being less hawkish on war. And for some of you who are on the left who said that, guess what? Now you look like a fucking idiot. Congratulations. I could name names, and I'm going to keep my mouth shut on this one. Stop sucking up to the duopoly. My goodness. By the way, Iran has a right to defend itself, if I didn't say that earlier. You even have people who are famous on the right turning on this decision by Donald Trump. Let's go into this. Tucker Carlson is speaking to Steve Bannon. Listen to what Tucker has to say.
And that Levin character will jump. You're right. You hate them. Don't hate them at all. I like them. This is crazy. What's the end game here? The end game, of course, is to topple the regime and just have this 90 million person civil war and further destroy Europe and the world. And it's like, we're not doing that again. Already been through this. We're not doing that again. And this is big boy stuff. This is not Gaza. And I never say anything about Gaza because I really tried, very offended by it. They blew up a church in Gaza with my money. I'm a Christian. Like, no, how about no? I said one thing about that, but I've never heard the end of it. But I've tried to stay away from Gaza. But now we're talking about a huge country. We're talking about Southwest Asia, one of the biggest energy producers
and
in
an
the
ancient
world.
civilization. This is not.
Also, since you're not going to convince me that the Iranians, I'm not a Shiite. I'm not like on the side of the Shiite clerics. I'm a freaking Episcopalian. Settle down. However, you're not going to convince me that the Iranian people are my enemy. Again, we're going down this here. Here's who you're required to hate. It's Orwell, man. I'm a free man. You're not telling me who I have to hate. I'll decide who I like and don't like on the basis of my values and what I believe my interests are. They spent, 5 years telling me Vladimir Putin is your enemy. No, he's not. I'm not mad at Vladimir Putin. Tell me why I should be. I'm mad at you. You know what I mean? This is like, it's all so fake. I'm not playing along.
Dear God, y'all got me siding with Tucker Carlson? Y'all put me to the point where Lord. And here's the thing. Black people, let me tell you right now. Don't you allow your kids to get sent into or talk your kids out of enlisting. Please talk them out of it. Please talk them out of it. No. I'm gonna tell you right now. Are you going to allow your kids to die on behalf of a supremacist state that is causing a war? Look, let me ask you this. Has Iran caused your rent to go up? Okay. Has Iran caused your medical bills to skyrocket? Has Iran made you have to pay these crazy student loan payments back that are overly inflated? No. Is Iran training our police to bash you in the head and go against your First Amendment rights? No? Okay. Did Iran cause Jim Crow? Oh, okay. Did Iran cause the Holocaust? No. Okay. How big of a contributor is Iran to the environment, especially when in regards to climate change? Are they one of the biggest contributors? No. Okay. You see where I'm going with this? Like, what have they actually done to make our lives worse? I'm waiting. Right? There are videos of Tehran. And people will be like, oh my God, the women are oppressed there. Baby, I saw women being out there fun and fancy free. And like 70% of them didn't have their heads covered. They were chilling. Drinking their coffee at cafes, having a good old time in Tehran. And don't say it's religiously oppressive because Iran also has a very large Jewish population. There are also Christian Iranians too. Yeah. So what are they doing against me that makes it so that I need to be on board for this? So that's one of the reasons why, like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? Doesn't make any sense to be going up against a country that, what have they actually done bad against us? Benjamin Netanyahu is a megalomaniac. And this is basically, you know, America's snot-nosed little brother.
Are you going to target the supreme leader?
Look, we're doing what we need to do. I'm not going to get into the details, but we've targeted their top nuclear scientists. It's basically Hitler's nuclear team. You know, we got them. We still have work to do on other sites. We have targeted their ballistic missile manufacturing facilities. Understand this. You see these bombs. You saw a single bomb. It's a 1-ton bomb, John, dropping on Tel Aviv and other places, causing killing men, women, and children. They're deliberately targeting our population. We're not doing that. We're targeting their military sites, their nuclear sites, their ballistic missile sites, so they don't have 20,000 of these that no country could survive with. Yeah.
So Benjamin Netanyahu is lying. His pants are on fire so much that they're turning into plasma. So here's the thing. Iran actually has been targeting exclusively military installments in Israel. Actually, you have to flip it because Israel's actually targeting civilians in Iran. So that's what the actual story is. The problem is that somebody like Benjamin Netanyahu, every accusation is a confession, right? And so if Benjamin Netanyahu, with that receding hairline, if he were to say, "Oh my God, the supreme leader is bald," Benjamin Netanyahu would be the one that's wearing the actual toupee. So this is the thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that this guy right here, he's a walking, talking loogie. I mean, he's a walking, talking hemorrhoid. You do not want this guy dictating U.S. policy and what should or shouldn't be done. And yet that's what he's doing. And Donald Trump is listening to him, not because Israel controls America, but because America controls Israel. And who controls America? It's not you or I. It's not our democratic values that control America. It's the corporate dictators. It's the oligarchs. It's the Peter Thiels. It's the Elon Musks. It's the Jeff Bezoses, right? It's the Larry Finks of the world that actually control these United States, or as somebody would call it, the United Corporations of America. It's crazy on its face, but that's exactly who this is. Let's let this anal discharge continue.
They want to continue stringing us along, but you know, there's a limit, because if we don't act now, there won't be a 13th hour. So we have to act. But what I'm saying is that we're not merely protecting ourselves. We're protecting everybody. We're protecting our Arab neighbors with whom we want to expand the peace, as we did under President Trump's leadership.
Oh, protecting Arab neighbors by bombing them into oblivion. Oh, silly me. Continuously attacking Syria, continuously attacking Lebanon, continuously attacking Yemen, right? And now Iran. Can't make this stuff up.
In the Abraham Accords, that will be possible if Iran is defanged. We're also protecting the world. They have ballistic missiles that can now reach deep into Europe and soon could reach the United States. And imagine what this regime that caused death to America every time that bombed your American embassies, that murdered 241 Marines in Beirut, that killed and injured thousands of American servicemen in Iraq and Afghanistan, that tried to blow up a restaurant in Washington, that burns the American flag. You want these people to have nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them to your cities? Today it's Tel Aviv, tomorrow it's New York. I understand America first. I don't understand America dead. That's what these people want. They chant death to America. So we're doing something that is in the service of mankind, of humanity, and it's a battle of good against evil.
Hang on. I'm gonna tell you right now, Iranians don't think about America like that. They just want you out of their face. They don't give a shit about us. What we do over here is what we do over here. They're like, just leave us alone. So they're not thinking about us like that. So here he is trying to paint a Middle Eastern country. He's trying to basically do the whole WMDs all over again, which he also championed as well back in the early 2000s. So he's doing the same song, just a different dance. And Donald Trump is going along with it.
America should and does stand with the good. That's what President Trump is doing, and I deeply appreciate his support.
And that's who Dave Smith voted for, Donald Trump. And so let me get into this, because I want to make sure I cover this piece here. So I was going to play more of the actual video on YouTube, but due to the sake of time, I don't have it. But I do want to cover this part because I want to give context. So let's get into this. Let's hear what Dave has to say now.
It was in 2007 that the Pentagon told George W. Bush that we cannot go to war with Iran because we do not have escalation dominance against them, essentially meaning that they can hit all of our bases and embassies in the region, and we are very vulnerable to them. And we've already seen demonstrated since the Israeli attack that the Iranian, the missiles that they sent last year toward Israel, as many of us guessed, that wasn't really their best. They were intentionally making an attack that wouldn't really hurt anybody, that wouldn't really lead to a war, which Iran has done over and over again. But now we've pushed them to the point where they probably don't feel that they have the option not to respond. And Donald Trump telling them to come back to the negotiating table now is a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, what a impotent leader to be sitting there talking about coming back to the negotiating table. It's like sitting after Pearl Harbor and telling FDR, now's the time to go negotiate with the Japanese.
Right.
Negotiations are over now. The time for negotiations was before this. And so, yeah, Donald Trump looks, and man, I supported him this last year. I apologize for doing so. It was a bad calculation. At the time, it seemed like the right one. But he should be impeached and removed for this one. Wow. And not on some like not on some ridiculous Nancy Pelosi. Of course, the Congress will never do it because they're all a bunch of, corrupt hacks.
This is the one thing they support. This is like
Donald Trump should be impeached and removed for this. All of his supporters should turn on him. It's the absolute betrayal of everything that he ran and campaigned on and everything that he stood for. And I will say, despite the fact that, Donald Trump supporters have been labeled like a cult following, and that certainly is true for a percentage of his supporters, he is going to lose his coalition over this.
So let me step in here. Of course he lied. Of course he lied. You still voted for him. I'm glad to see that you're clear-eyed now. But once the toothpaste is out of the tube, there's no putting it back in the tube. You know what I mean? Once you hit the pillow hard enough and the feathers come out and then they blow with the wind, you can't catch all the feathers back and put them back inside the pillowcase. It's already out. And so when the warning came out to you, you still went with Donald Trump anyway because he was better than Kamala. And this is to a lot of people who thought that Donald Trump would be better, including some of the Palestinian activists that decided to go with Donald Trump instead of going third party. I'm sorry, but you fell for it too. You should have went outside the duopoly. And people let you know. Don't stay in the duopoly because they all serve the corporate dictators. And they use Israel as the attack dog in the region. And yes, I have been predicting this. I said that by October of this year, about 30%, about a third of Donald Trump's voters are going to hate his guts. I am on time with this. I'm on time. I said that during the inauguration. His supporters are going to, about a third of his supporters are going to turn on him. Because he ain't doing a damn thing for Americans. He's sending your money, my money, our money to Israel. To do what? To destroy other brown people. How many veterans are homeless still? How's the VA doing? Is the VA doing okay? Have we stopped doing this destabilization to countries below our southern border to slow down undocumented immigrants? How's your health care doing? Do we have that big, beautiful health care that we were supposed to get? How's your rent? Is your rent okay? Are you struggling for your rent, with your rent? How about food? Are you still struggling to buy food at the grocery store? Are you still having to pinch pennies a little bit more? Yeah, you're not too cool with Donald anymore, are you? You're not too cool with him. Good. Now leave the duopoly. Leave both parties. Do what Dave should have done. Stay out of the duopoly. I bet you Dave learned his lesson now. But this is what happens when you support a duopoly.
I know I don't just speak for myself when I say there are a lot of us who simply will not go along with this. So it's just a devastating mistake. By the way, on top of that, he's also going to lose the deportation fight because of this. Because right now he needed all the political capital he could have to turn that, you got a majority support for deportations, but the minority is very mobilized and they're out and they're protesting all around the country. He needed all of his political capital for that move. So here's what we got. The neocons win. More war abroad and, bomb the world and invite the world. No matter who you vote for, you always get John McCain.
Yep. Now, I will say this, despite my harsh criticism of Dave Smith, I'm glad that he has seen the error of his ways. But at the same time, like I said, it's like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube. Because I'm telling you right now, what Donald Trump is supporting, if troops land and start trying to get into Iran, I'm gonna tell you right now, the United States is screwed. We're screwed. This is what Israel has done lately. This is actually Iranian state television. This happened over the last day or so. So they bombed Iranian state TV. Let me share this. This is from journalist Rania Khalek. She said, this is said to be the most watched channel inside Iran. This woman is famous. The country just watched Israel bomb her during live broadcast. Iran is a country of 90 million people. If any of them had any positive feelings towards Israel or the United States, that's quickly fading with these criminal acts of US-backed Israeli terrorism. And she's absolutely correct. This was a terrorist act by Israel. And the fact is that that's what's been happening. Terrorist acts by a supremacist state. By a supremacist state that is continuing to terrorize the region. Here's the outside of the television studio.
سردبیر گروه دفاعی خبرگزاری صدا و سیما در این چند سال در تمام عملیات‌های وعده صادق جلوه اقتدار ایران و شکست هیمنه رژیم صهیونیستی رو به تصویر کشیدیم. اینجا سازمان صدا و سیماست، مرکز فرماندهی جنگ رسانه ایران و مرکز به قدرت کشیدن تصویر اقتدار ایرانی و ایرانی جنگ.
So what you're seeing here is basically a terrorist act, a result of a terrorist act by the state of Israel. And so now, when Iran responds and does what they do, guess what? Who does the United States have to blame? Because who hit first? It was Israel that hit first. And the United States gets on board like Netanyahu wants them to do, it's not going to be good. Now, I do have to say this. That journalist, that anchor in Iran, she's a G. She is a G, because moments after that, she returned back to the desk. She was sitting right there. She's like, y'all ain't chasing me away. She came back to the desk. This is from DD Geopolitics. This news anchor, Miss Imami, has returned to live broadcasting. It was like not even maybe like 45 minutes before that was afterwards. So the Iranians, they got guts, man. They got some intestinal fortitude. But this is why it's so important that we resist the duopoly. Because if we continue to keep this going, it's not good. It's curtains. It's curtains for the West. I'm telling you right now. So for everybody who's watching, please, don't fall for the okie doke. We have midterms coming up in 2026. Don't fall for the okie doke. Stay away from both Democrat and Republican parties. And let's come together and let's build dual power. Let's do mutual aid. Let's try to get out of this system. if you guys want to focus on the 11 demands, let's do that. But this system is completely unsustainable. They will have us killed in order to to make an extra dollar, because that's how the corporate dictators operate. And Dave, listen to us next time, will you? Go ahead, give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody for joining in. We're going to go to the chat, and then we will move on to our final story. So good to see all of you joining. So let me start off. I think I saw something from Roger. Let's get into that. Oh gosh. All right, so I'll read these a couple, and then I'll check the Rumble side to see if we have any Rumble rants. So Roger says, the protest is the perfect place to get together with people and talk about, let's run this ballot measure, exercise true power, lawmaking, constitutional power. Problem is, too many of us want to start at the top via DC and not starting at the ground level with the states. So I'm going to say this. I definitely agree with you, Roger. One of the things that we need to do is, look, in order to have a great roof, you need to start off with a great foundation, right? So city council, comptroller, county commissioner, things like that, start locally. If you really want to change the system, you have to start at the base level. A house built on sand cannot stand, right? You have to build it on a solid rock foundation. Therefore, you need to start at the ground level and then build up from there. That's one of the points that people like myself and Roger and many of us talk about when it comes to actually making change from the ground up. So thank you very much for that, Roger. Let's continue. He said, you got all these people out here who are not just from New York, but from New York City during the presidential election, suffering inner turmoil between Kamala and Trump, racking their head out and deluding themselves that one is better than the other, knowing full well their vote means nothing. I'm talking to you, Libertarian Dave Smith, and I'm talking to you, I am Blakely. Out of a population of 19.5 million with 12 to 13.5 million registered voters, out of that, New York State got 6.5 million registered Democrats, 3.5 million registered no party, and 2.3 million GOP or Republican. Out of that, 12 million to 13.5 million registered voters on average of a little over 7 million vote for president, 6 million or 200,000 for governor. 2 years later, and specifically for New York City, with a population of 8.5 million, 5.6 million are registered New York City voters. Yet, a little under 3 million vote for president, a little under 2 million vote for governor, a little over 1 million vote for New York City mayor. Outside of 2020, where turnout shot up to 8 million, these numbers ate consistent election to election. Don't worry, Dave, and I am Blakely, our vote doesn't count, but we are not a swaying purple state. And then he shared this. The truth of the matter is that Netanyahu controls more senators in the Senate than Trump does. So war it is. This is Colonel Douglas McGregor. So let me share this. All right, so let's go here.
The problem is this, and this is most important, Cyrus. If you're President Trump, you sit down with your political advisors, whomever he's talking to these days, probably Lutnick and Witkoff, who are both fervent Zionists, and he says, well, how many senators do I control in a crucial vote in the Senate? And how many senators does Mr. Netanyahu control in a crucial vote in the Senate? Answer: Mr. Netanyahu controls more of the Senate than Donald Trump.
Oh.
That's probably also true for the House. That's why Washington is this fantasy island. Everybody who lives there is stuffing their pockets full of cash that they get from various lobbies and kickbacks because of their support for military equipment going all over the world or the commitment of U.S. forces somewhere. Donald Trump doesn't seem to have any control over any of it. What can he do? I don't know if you saw him I think it was yesterday, where he was asked directly about Iran.
Right.
And I've seen him in person up close. And this was a very different Donald Trump. He sat there very sort of stone-faced. Well, what about Iran and the negotiations? What's happening? And he sits there and he says, well, they want to enrich uranium and they can't do that. We can't have that. And they have to give up some other things, meaning theater ballistic missiles and so forth. And they won't do that. So I think I've said it, and it's clear the consequences are very dire. And then he sort of sat there.
Right.
This is not a man who wants to go to war.
Right.
Of course not. He's never wanted to go to war against anybody. But what's he going to do now? He's essentially botched himself in thanks to his wonderful advisors and his readiness to essentially unconditionally support anything Israel and its agents in this country want. He's stuck. So what's the answer? The answer is we're going to have a war with Iran.
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of people think that the president is the head of the snake, when in reality, he's not. He's just a middle manager, right? There are levels above him. And so when it comes to how he operates, it's the oligarchs. The oligarchs are the oligarchs that are the people who actually run this. And he takes direction from them. He doesn't take direction from us. He doesn't take direction from Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu is also just a middle manager. Ultimately, it is about the people who are in the shadows that are running the world. And I'm not talking about in a conspiracy theory type of way. I'm talking about the people who are like the central bankers and the people who run the corporate banks and stuff like that. These are people who actually run the world. It's not Donald Trump or Benjamin Netanyahu. They're just the managers. That's all they really are. Anybody thinks otherwise, they're living in fantasy land. Let's continue on with this. This is Israelis here. And the funny thing is that if Iranians actually did this, Israelis would be crying bloody murder. But they're singing a song.
When you're messing with the Jews, you're always gonna lose. It's God's plan, and God rules the land. Bum, 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 Iran. Bum, 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 bum.
So here's the thing. They're unhinged because they're singing about murdering civilians primarily. I mean, and they did it to Palestinians in Gaza too. Any wonder why people like me say that Zionism is a sick ideology? Has nothing to do with religion, by the way. It all has to do with taking over. And so, yeah, let's continue on. Let me see here. Let's go into let's go into Rumble Rants. So let me see if we have any Rumble Rants ready to go. Looks like we are good on the Rumble side. All right. And let's go into the rest of the chat here. Let me see. Jacqueline asks, are you going to be reading Archie Lord book as your next reading project? No, I have a couple of other books that I've already have in mind before that, but I'm gonna have to add her to my list. Thank you very much for that. Edward says corporate media plays a big role in dividing us, which helps the elites continuing their corruption. What made Dave Smith that Trump was going to be anti-war when he sent troops to Somalia in the beginning of his first term for resources? Did he forget that Trump was no different than Biden? Yeah, people have short-term memories when it comes to things like that. And I think it's important that people remind people like Dave Smith that, Donald Trump has actually been doing this stuff for a while now. Let me see here. We got Kit from Heartlands Media joining in. Good to see you, Kit. Nice to have you in the chat. Let me see. Oh, yeah. Edward says, BB says that he is here to serve humanity. I had to pinch myself from laughing. Yeah. Oh, gosh. He's humanity. Yeah. Humanity, my ass. My goodness. All right. Let's continue here. Let's see. All right. See, Black Ronin says, just like they did to Daria Dugina, luckily this woman survived. Yeah, thankfully she did. Let me see. HMM says, I like your J light. Thank you. I shaped it in a form of a J. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for that. W Dill says, tap in, got you for life. Thank you very much. On the Kick side, thank you very much. If you guys have not noticed, I also have a Kick channel too, so just to let you guys know. Killier Grigor says JB has the coolest ties. Thank you. This is one of my rainbow ties, actually. I love this tie, by the way. This tie is great. Yeah. Eid says John McCain sung the same song in 2008 on the campaign trail. And yes, and just like Israelis, nothing about them is original. I said what I said. All right. Now, let's us get into the final story for today. It's going to be an interesting story out of Florida. Baby, Ron DeSantis lost. Let's get into that. So, of course, we talked to Eric and Corey earlier about the demands pledge. So that was a great conversation to have there. I hope you guys are able to tune into that one. Then we talked about Dave Smith calling for impeachment. So that was interesting. I think, yes, I agree that Donald Trump should be impeached, just like basically all those other presidents should be locked up for war crimes, including Donald Trump. But of course, Dave Smith, you voted for the guy. Hey, buyer's remorse is a pain in the ass. But now we're going to get into this guy. DeSantis loses battle against teachers. This is going to be one out of Florida, fresh from Florida. Let's get into this. So, anti-union DeSantis defeated. I like to see DeSantis get defeated whenever I can, right? Because DeSantis be doing some shit. He's doing some shit. So teachers have a little bit of a victory that they can celebrate today, especially in regards to unions. And so I would like to get into that right here. Let's get into it. So this is actually a local story that I want to get into within the state of Florida. If you're not in Florida, you may see something like this happen in your state. But this is out of Orlando Weekly. It says Florida teachers unions score milestone victory in DeSantis war on public sector unions. The blurb says at least 100 local teachers unions in Florida have managed to survive new requirements imposed by the stringent law passed in 2023. So here we go. It says the Florida Education Association, the statewide teachers union, announced Monday that 100 of its local unions throughout the state has successfully recertified, meaning teachers represented by those unions have voted to keep their existing union alive. Under Senate Bill 256, passed into law in 2023, most public sector unions in the state must hold annual recertification elections if less than 60% of the workers they represent are full dues-paying members. Florida's right to work law, a policy rooted in efforts to stomp out multiracial solidarity during Jim Crow, means that no worker represented by a union in Florida can be compelled to pay dues. So, reaching that 60% threshold, asking workers to financially support their union through dues payments in this economy when they don't have to reap the benefits can be a challenge. So, this part talking about the policy for the right to work law is deeply rooted in efforts to stop out multiracial solidarity during Jim Crow. That one was actually something that actually caught my eye, because the thing is like the issue is, having right to work laws as well also can hinder union support, especially within the state, because you don't have as much power like you should. So I want to get into this because I want to share this just really quick in conjunction with this story. So let me stop sharing here and let's share over in this article too, just so that we get a little bit of a backstory of why it is racist to have right to work laws. So this is from Facing South. Let's get into this. Let me make sure this is big enough so that everybody can read. It says the racist roots of right to work laws. It says this week, Republican lawmakers in Michigan, birthplace of the United Auto Workers, and more broadly, the U.S. labor movement, shocked the nation by becoming the 24th state to pass right to work legislation, which allows non-union employees to benefit from union contracts. While Michigan's momentous decision has received widespread media attention, little has been said about the origins of right to work laws, which find their roots in extreme pro-segregationist and anti-communist elements in the 1940s South. The history of anti-labor right to work laws starts in Houston. It was there in 1936 that Vance Muse, an oil industry lobbyist, found the Christian American Association with backing from the Southern oil companies and industrialists from the Northeast. As Dartmouth sociologist Mark Dixon notes in his fascinating history of the period, the Christian American Association was the first in the nation to champion the right to work as a full-blown political slogan. Muse was a fixture of the far-right politics in the South before setting into his anti-labor crusade. In his 1946 book, Southern Exposure, crusading journalist Stetson Kennedy wrote, the man Muse is quite a character. He's 6'4", wears a 10-gallon hat, but generally reserves his cowboy boots for trips north. Now over 50, Muse has been professionally engaged in reactionary enterprises for more than a quarter of a century. Says, as Kennedy described, these causes included opposing women's suffrage, child labor laws, integration, and growing efforts to change the Southern political order as represented in the threat of Roosevelt's New Deal. Muse's sister and associate at the Christian American Association, Ida Darden, openly complained about the First Lady Eleanor Clubs, saying they, as related by Kennedy, stood for $15 a week salary for all. You guys see the word? I'm not going to say it here because even though I could, I probably might get in trouble. House help, Sundays off, no washing or cleaning upstairs. As an afterthought, she added, my N-word maid wouldn't dare sit down in the same room with me unless she sat at the floor at my feet. Allowing herself to still go further, the little lady went on to say, Christian Americans can't afford to be anti-Semitic, but we know where we stand on the... All right. That's what she said. Racist as hell. Says the association also suspected Catholics, which Dixon notes caused the downfall of the Crusades in neighboring Louisiana. But for far-right conservatives like Muse, as well as industry groups like the Southern States Industrial Council of Labor, including Black labor, posed an especially dangerous threat in Texas, thanks to the burgeoning wartime economy, along with labor organizing drive spearheaded by the Congress of Industrial Organizations, or the CIO, and to a lesser extent, the American Federation of Labor, the AFL. Unions were rapidly growing in Texas after hovering around 10% of the workforce during the 1930s, which was around the start of the Great Depression. Union membership exploded by 225% during the next decade. Muse and the Christian American Association saw danger. Not only were the unions expanding in bargaining power and therefore improving the wages and working conditions of working class Texans, they also constituted a political threat. The CIO, in particular, opposed Jim Crow and demanded an end to segregation. Unions were an important political ally to FDR in the New Deal, and always lurking in the shadows was a prospect of a red menace, stoked by anti-communist hysteria. So this basically goes into how, of course, the right to work laws, which are really anti-union, were started off as, racism. And so it always goes back to anti-Blackness, racism within this country. And so I'm going to share that link of the article in the chat with you guys, so you guys have that. But yes, so when it comes to the teachers actually having these unions, it makes it tougher to have these unions in a state that has, right is a right to work state. Let's go back to the article. So it says unions that fail to reach 60% threshold under the new law must petition the State Public Employees Relations Commission to hold a recertification election. If they don't, the union is decertified. State records show that so far, more than 69,000 public employees in Florida, including all formerly unionized adjunct faculty represented by the labor union SEIU, blue-collar workers such as school bus drivers and nurses employed in various state departments, have seen their unions decertified and the union contracts nullified as a result of unions failing to petition the state for recertification. This means any rights or benefits they were guaranteed under the union contracts are now non-enforceable. Members of the FEA, affiliated with the National Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers, are not among those affected. So it just goes to show how teachers are constantly having to fight for at least just some things that's absolutely necessary, when it comes to pay and working conditions. But of course, anti-union people like Ron DeSantis don't want to, allow it to happen, because ultimately they want to underpay our teachers, the same people who are tasked with educating our kids. A targeted assault on teachers' unions says teacher unions were widely perceived as a target of Florida's 2023 anti-union law, as frequent political punching bag of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, the Republican governor who championed 2023 law ahead of his unsuccessful bid for U.S. president, has previously described education unions as partisan groups and framed the legislation as an effort to rein in out-of-control unions in schools. Now, it says, taking from the page of Trap Law Playbook, SB 256 imposed not only the burdensome recertification requirement, but also made it harder for union members to pay dues by prohibiting dues payments through a paycheck deduction. So essentially, over 60% of the union had to be made of dues paying members. And on top of it, in order to pay your dues, it could not be deducted from your check, which means you had to do it separately once you got your paycheck. That's how they made it harder. So it says, and expanded the types of information unions are now required to report to the state annually. DeSantis dubbed the Paycheck Protection Act, though its official title was less catchy, Employee Organizations Representing Public Employees. Lawmakers last year adjusted an audit rule the law had imposed after police and firefighter unions lobbied its sponsors for changes. So it says, touted as an effort to empower educators, the law is similar to anti-union policies enacted in other Republican-controlled states that seek to curtail or otherwise undercut collective bargaining rights. It was backed by corporate-funded groups like the American Legislative Exchange Council, a conservative bill mill that feeds model policies to state legislators and other explicitly anti-union groups. Pro-union forces can squawk and try to spin this all they want, but it's just common sense legislation. That's from the Center for Independent Employees, President Russ Brown. Excuse me. Also, it says Brown, who attended the bill signing, is a labor relations consultant who runs a firm specializing in union avoidance out of Satellite Beach. E-commerce giant Amazon, for example, paid Brown's firm Road Warrior Productions more than $3 million last year to persuade Amazon employees not to join forces with the Teamsters. Teamsters Local 79 in Tampa, representing both public and private sector workers, lost half a dozen bargaining units, groups of workers represented by a union last year as a result of new requirements under the amendment. So this really is, a lot, right? So the fact that they were able to keep their union going is a victory, but of course, DeSantis will continue to try to do what he can to make sure that unions are completely eliminated out of the state. And so they've been trying to undercut unions, as much as they possibly can, but people are now starting to wake up and see, the value of unions. Now, I am the type of person where I think that we should have worker owned. But of course, this is the public sector. So of course, public sector unions, I also agree with, right? And so these teachers, they are fighting for, better working conditions, better pay, which I honestly think that that teachers should be paid better. But unfortunately, because of the way teachers are viewed within this country, they're not. In fact, we don't see our teachers as valuable as we should, in my opinion. This is from Educator Pay Data. And so it says, even with record level increases in some states, average teacher pay has failed to keep up with inflation over the past decade. Adjusted for inflation, on average, teachers are making 5% less than they did 10 years ago. At 4.4%, the increase in starting salary represents the most significant increase over the 15 years of NEA has been taking increases in starting teacher pay. However, due to a 3.0 inflation rate, this year's real salary growth was only 1.5%, resulting in inflation adjusting starting salaries that are now $3,728 below the 2008-2009 levels. The union advantage, teachers earn 24% more on average. In states with collective bargaining and education support, professionals earn 7% more. So let's go into Florida so you guys can see. Here is the average teacher starting salary, which is $48,639. Average teacher salary is $54,875. So we are number 50 in the nation. Not number 1, not number 2, not number 5, not number 10, not number 20, not number 25. We're number 50 in the nation for average teacher salary. Florida does not give a damn about teachers. And this shows in people like Ron DeSantis. And so if you're wondering, well, why isn't my kid doing better? This is why. This is part of the reason. This is part of the problem. And on top of that, there's no value in education, right? There's no value in education. They want to keep your kids dumb. Why? So that your kids stay at the bottom. So then they'll just be good little drones, good little workers. So then they can take advantage of them when it comes to their power as workers. No wonder why we have an average reading level of 6th grade level reading level here in this country. Because you have states like Florida that constantly are treating teachers like crap. And then they go, oh man, well, education is not doing good. And you know why they do this? They do this on purpose. They do this on purpose so then they can go, well, we have an answer for you guys. How about we just do charter schools, public-private partnerships? See? And now we can have corporations teaching our kids instead of this nasty old government bureaucracy called the Department of Education. And so now you have corporations teaching our kids. But then guess what? Guess what happens when you have corporations that are for profit teaching kids? Well, guess what? Profits take precedent over actually teaching the kids because they actually want that tuition more than anything else. But you're not necessarily paying out of pocket. The tuition actually is taken out of your tax dollars from the state and going into the coffers of these corporations. And then these corporations will cheat kids out of an education and then leave them by the wayside and then close up shop and then move on. I actually talked about charter schools a few weeks back. I am against charter schools because charter schools don't do a damn thing for kids overall, right? We need to have a fully well-funded education system. And it should not be paid for through property tax. It should be paid for across the board and equitably for all kids. I said equitably, not equally, because some kids are below the floor and they need to be brought up to be even. And then we can raise the standards for everybody. But that's one of the biggest issues. And this is what we call death by a thousand. They thought they got me, but they didn't. Anywho, but they call it death by a thousand cuts, right? And so that's what they do. That they cut and they cut and they cut and they make it worse for teachers. So then if teachers can't teach well because they're worried about, oh, I may have to get a second job, or, oh, I can't afford to actually take this job. So less teachers are going to be more likely to become teachers. They're going to more likely go to school and then go for something else. Then guess what? Then our education system cracks and it goes under. And so then this creates a problem that the politicians created into saying, well, you know what? We just give our kids over to the corporations for them to be taught by them. And the problem is that because of this, a lot of parents are also equally concerned because their kids aren't getting a good education because the teachers are being treated like crap. And so then the parents go, well, I want my kid to have the best education, so I have no choice. I got to take my kid to a charter school. And so the parents feel like they have no other choice. So then they choose to put their kids in charter school, because they feel like their kid's not getting a good enough education. But part of that reason is because the teachers aren't making enough. Because our state rather instead of giving actual pay and benefits to teachers so that they can actually do a better job instead of having more schools so that we can have smaller class sizes and things like that. Instead, what do? They ring the school for everything that it is worth, and then the kids suffer. And so then it creates two tiers. So you have some, and then also charter schools can reject kids based on different things. Like charter school, if your child has special needs or requires special education, charter schools can say, no, we're not taking them. So then, then your kid may get rejected. It's just a very unfair system. There's no equity, there's no equality, there's no opportunity for kids to be able to advance. It's all based on, what the corporation chooses. It's a two-tiered system. Some kids are going to be treated better than others. It's not fair. And so going back to the educator pay, this is part of how they do it, right? It says minimum living wage is $61,002. Now, according to the National Low Income Housing Coalition Out of Reach program, you need to make over $35 an hour to afford a two-bedroom apartment in the state of Florida. So that's below $35 an hour. My God. Average K through 12 earnings is $33,324. It's nowhere near what it needs to be. Nowhere near. And people wonder why teachers are suffering. This is why, even though I am for more cooperatives, unions can be a step in the right direction, but it also depends on the union bosses and if they are actually in league with the rank and file union members, or if they're in league with the bosses at the corporation, or in this case, with the elected officials that are, running the government, right? It's like, who are they actually for? And so that's the only thing. That's the only problem I have with unions. That's one of the only problems I have with unions. Another problem I have with unions is that really, it doesn't put the ownership in the hands of the workers. It keeps ownership in the hands of the capitalists. But, since we're talking about public sector, there should be, stronger unions. And to be honest with you, I think all teachers should be in union regardless. But these are some of the things that have been happening in the state of Florida. And then people wonder why, why are the students in Florida behind in so many different ways? Well, this is why, because we're constantly being, cut down, because we don't pay the teachers, what they should be paid. And I kind of look at it like, if you're running a garage and you have auto mechanics, right? You have auto mechanics, but then you're not paying them a living wage. How are you expecting them to do great quality work, especially if they're too tired because they had to work a second job? Or they're so distraught because of how much, how little they're being paid, that they're constantly, facing depression and anxiety. And so they can't really focus on their work as well. It's the same thing with teachers. But the thing is, it's like, instead of working on your car, they're working on your kid. They're training the minds of your child. Do you really want teachers that are facing anxiety and depression and all these different things because of their material conditions not being met, do you really want that, to be on your kid? If you care about your kid, then that means you need to care about the teachers that are teaching them. And if you care about the teachers that are teaching them, that means that you have to make sure that they also have a great, healthy standard of living, a dignified standard of living. We need to see teachers the way teachers are seen in other countries. I think was it in South Korea or was it another country? They have a nickname for their teachers. They call their teachers nation builders. Why don't we have that same respect? Why don't we have that same reverence for teachers? We have more reverence for billionaires who exploit people than we do for teachers who actually help enlighten our children. Y'all wonder why the empire's cooked. This is why. But I'm glad that teachers have a win against people like Ron DeSantis. But we have to change the system to benefit not just the teachers, but it ultimately will benefit our kids and their kids. Because without that, there is no future. Go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in for that segment. Appreciate it very much. Now we're going to get into the chat. So let me check the Rumble side to see if we have any Rumble rants, and we will move on. We're good on the Rumble side. All right, perfection. Let's go to Edward says the right to work law simply means the right to be a paid servant. Crazy. And Joey Peltier, good to see you, Joey, says don't let the unions be the sole negotiators for a general strike. Taft-Hartley Act changed the game with unions. Thank you very much for that, Joey Peltier. Appreciate it. Edward says in Europe, they have 2 teachers in a class and they spend just half the day because they know that kids can't digest all that information. Plus, there's no homework, yet the education is better. You know what? Michael Moore did a documentary. I think it was called Capitalism, a Love Story. I think that's what it's called. But he basically goes to a lot of European countries and he looks at, some of the policies they have in these European countries. You're like, well, we should take this back to the United States, even though some of them originated in the United States, but they were taken away. And one of the things that they did, I forget which country they were in, but they were in a European country, a Scandinavian country, I think. And the kids were taught their native language, but they were also taught English. So you had teenagers that were speaking English, right? They sounded like they were American, to be honest with you. That's how good their English was. But they also said that they don't give homework. They're like, why do you have homework? Why do you work from home? Your home should be a place of where you get to relax and, let your hair down. Work is work. Home is home. I agree with that. By the way, I barely did homework going to school. I did not like doing homework. Sometimes I wonder how I passed, but I did. And then on top of that, you look at the meals that these kids are getting in other countries, the nutritious meals. Like, go to France and go into the kids' lunch counter at lunchtime. You're going to want to steal some of them kids' lunch. You'd be like, hey, you going to eat that? Because I'm telling you, these kids be eating good. In Japan, oh my God, in Japan, kids be eating good. And you see what they serve our kids in these schools? Because of budget cuts. It's not because, the schools are bad. No. No, it's because of budget cuts. It's because the death of 1,000 cuts. Because they want schools to look as horrible as they can so that they can put the education of your child in the hands of the corporate dictators. That's why. So yeah. Luz, I'm telling, boy, you reading my mind. Luz says, but don't you know that ketchup is all the vegetable a child needs, right? It's crazy. Counting that as a food. It was a condiment. The hell you talking about? You know, I mean, these. I swear, I'm telling you, these politicians. See, this is why we need to start locally. Y'all think we're playing when we start locally? Go to your school board. Start making waves. Take the 11 demands with you. Go take the 11 demands with you and apply that in the school system. Run for school board. Run for county commissioner. Run for city comptroller. Run for tax collector. Run for city council. Run for mayor. Do it. You use the 11 demands as your springboard. Do it. Because here's the thing. These local issues, they affect us immediately. I'll put it to you like this. Those of you who ever been into the doctor, right? Going federally is like, it's like taking a pain pill that works 5% at a time, right? But first, once you take it, then you have to wait about a good 45 minutes to an hour before it starts taking full effect, right? That's how federal government typically works, right? Or no, let me amend it. Federal government policies affect you like a pill. It takes about 45 minutes before you actually feel it, right? But local politics, it's like having an IV in your arm. The moment they push, all you gotta do is count 1, 2, 3, and you start to feel it, the effects right there. You feel the effects more immediate, right? This is why we say focus on the local. Focus on that. Because ultimately, that's what's going to push things in a beneficial direction. And you start there at the base at the bottom, right? Then you build up from there. Once you build up from there, baby, the sky's the limit. Look what they did here in Florida. I talked about this story a couple weeks back when they actually started, they started paying off medical debt for citizens of Orlando, for citizens of Orange County. I talked about somebody that actually was working on that program on Saturday. And he wants to see that expanded even further. I wish I got the letter. But yeah, we can do stuff like that. Imagine what we can do with housing, with healthcare, education. We can do so much good. This is why we organize. But yeah, it's true. And yes, Eric says, do it. 11demands.org. Yep. Thank you very much for that. All right. So we went long, but it was a great show. And I am deeply appreciative of all the input. You guys are brilliant. And I appreciate everybody that tuned in. So, of course, as you all know, Of course, clips will be out throughout the week, and I will be seeing you guys on Thursday for the Savvy and JB show. Of course, it's going to be our Juneteenth episode, and just so happens to fall on Juneteenth. So happy early Juneteenth. So this is going to be a great show. Next week, I'll be doing a show next week. So let me make sure on my calendar. So far, I'm going to be having a couple of guests on. I just want to make sure that it's confirmed. But we'll be having a discussion about healthcare next week. So that's going to be really good. And so, yeah. And then, of course, you guys have the JB show on Revolutionary Blackout Network later this week on Sunday. So that will be a good show, of course. And by the way, happy late Father's Day to all the dads out there, by the way, as well. Joey says local politics is owned by families who hand over positions back and forth to each other, all their family over generations. Nepotism is key to running for local elections. It's all these old families that own. Yeah, you got to break that up too. Break it up, So definitely. Thank you so very much for that. Also, just to let you guys know, of course, I shared this before, but in case you guys haven't heard, then yes, as a kidney transplant patient, I'm going through it right now. So I'm trying to raise funds for transplant for myself to, take care of myself, post-transplant. So if you guys would like to, you guys can assist in donating for this. I appreciate it very much. So yeah, I had just got a kidney transplant 2 months ago. So this is me basically, helping with the transplant, post-transplant expenses, so that I can keep this this gift, so that I don't squander it. So I appreciate any type of assistance whatsoever. So of course I will be putting that link in the chat if anybody would like to donate at all. So I appreciate that very, very much. And so, yeah, with that being said, I'm going to head on out. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And what do I always say at the end, right? You guys know what I'm about to say. Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny because joy is revolutionary, or read because reading is fundamental. And use your imagination to imagine something wonderful, not just for yourself, but for the entire world. Why? Because we all deserve it. Why? Because we're human beings and we actually have the power to do it. I love you guys for watching. Take care. Mwah, forehead kisses. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.